The American Secretary of State Antony Blinken is wrapping up his two-day visit to China today. On Monday, remember, Blinken had held delegation-level talks with President Xi Jinping. Now, Xi Jinping said that China and the United States had made more progress on a number of different issues. Blinken, before departing for Washington, has said that both nations need to stabilize their ties. Now, Blinken has said that the two leaders spoke about North Korea increasing its activities. He also added that everyone has been encouraging Pyongyang to stop its actions.
We also spoke about North Korea's increasingly reckless actions and rhetoric. All members of the international community have an interest in encouraging the DPRK to act responsibly, to stop launching missiles, to start engaging on its nuclear program. And China is in a unique position to press Pyongyang to engage in dialogue and to end its dangerous behavior.
Now, speaking about Taiwan, Antony Blinken reiterated the long-standing one China policy of the Americans. He said that the United States will prefer peaceful ways out of the conflict. Now, Blinken also said that a healthy and a robust economy benefits both China and the United States. He said that the United States was actually in favor of de-risking ties and not decoupling them. And talking about the ties to the BRICS nations, Blinken said that the United States is engaging with the BRICS nations across the board and will continue to do so. He also referred to Brazil's president's recent visit and pointed out to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's upcoming four-day visit from the 21st till the 24th of June later this month. Meanwhile, the Chinese Prime Minister Li Qiang is in Berlin. China is all set to hold delegation-level talks with Germany, and this is the first time that the two countries will, of course, engage in a face-to-face meeting since 2018. And ahead of this, Germany's President Frank-Walter Steinmeier had spoken on the importance of the US-China ties. He called for the strengthening of communication channels between both the nations. And this comes amidst the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to Beijing. Now, the Blinken-Xi Jinping meeting in China could, of course, set up a summit between Xi Jinping and the American President Joe Biden sometime later this year. And to give us more perspective in terms of what is to be made out of Antony Blinken's visit to China, we're being joined in by Mr. Edward P. Joseph, who is a senior fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. He's also a foreign policy analyst. He's joining us live from Skopje in Macedonia. Now, Mr. Joseph, thank you very much indeed for taking time out and speaking to us here on WION. Let me begin by asking you this. This is an important visit by Antony Blinken to China, and also in terms of what is being said, that the United States and China do not want to decouple, but rather to de-risk their relationship. What do you make of this?
I think this was an important visit, and I think that the U.S. managed it reasonably well by having low expectations and sending signals of very low expectations for the meeting in the run-up to it. In fact, there seemed to be no indication that the U.S. was trying to accommodate China in almost any sphere. And then, with these low expectations as the backdrop, we come out of this and we see President Xi saying that there was progress. And that there is actually not just rhetoric, that there's actually agreement. We know this from the U.S. readout of the meeting between Secretary Blinken and President Xi, that there's actually agreement to work together, to have working groups and work on issues where there is overlap and cooperation between Washington and Beijing. And, of course, on those issues, the severe issues that on which Washington and Beijing do not agree, there's at least the commitment on both sides to maintain communication and to try to prevent any slide into outright confrontation and conflict.
Absolutely, indeed. That appears to be the tone and tenor of the statements that have been made. And also, Mr. Joseph, do you see there is any kind of a divergence in terms of how the United States would want to engage with China and how American allies in Europe, such as France and Germany, would want to engage with China?
Yes, I believe that the approach that the Americans are taking is much more cautious, for example, and restrained than the tone that, for example, President Emmanuel Macron of France sent in his last visit. Although I would say that in general, the European Union across Europe, including in France, are generally aligned with the United States and generally very concerned about China's posture and hear what China thinks. And the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Jing kept mentioning this, that he emphasized that his resentment, China's resentment at this so-called, in his words, China threat theory. I believe that that threat actually is widely shared here in Europe. And in fact, there's pretty close convergence between the United States and the EU. Please.
Absolutely, indeed. My final quick question, Mr. Joseph, is do you think in the aftermath of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the American policy towards China has undergone a slight nuance change? Because what seems to be now, the statements that are now being put forth, it appears that the United States would prefer to mend its ties with China so that it can use the leverage that China has on Moscow.
I believe that there's some truth to that. We should make it clear here and remind ourselves that it was Secretary Blinken's comments recently to the Chinese foreign minister about that the U.S. Was concerned, very concerned that China would provide weapons to Russia, and that Secretary Blinken made it very clear that this was intolerable for the U.S., and that sparked another round of tensions with China and sharp retorts. I think Russia looms very largely here, but the U.S. is continued on the path to try to isolate Vladimir Putin for his unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. Thank you.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Edward P. Joseph, for joining us and getting us all those details there.
You're welcome.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.